But
And we're going to go ahead and get started right now. I want to thank everybody for joining us for what was initially a Training Tuesday and now has been transformed into this summer's cataloging workshop. This is the annual refresher for those of you who have Cat 1 permissions, and so we will also be taking note of that. This counts for that. I am very pleased to introduce 3 individuals who will be leading the presentation and the discussion today. Mary Kay Emmerich is the director of the Newton County Public Library. Jennifer Stuffy is with Noble County Public Library as a branch manager, and then Anna, who almost everybody here knows or knows of, being the Evergreen Indiana coordinator. They're going to be talking about all things to do with parts, which has been an ongoing thing for months now, and so they're going to bring it in and give us even more detail and information about it. So I'm going to hand it off to Anna at this point, and I will be monitoring chat for any questions that you might have.
thank you, Ruth. This is actually the 3rd seasonal workshop that has been offered on monographic parts in the Evergreen, Indiana community. It continues to grow and change as we have along the way. Today's program is going to be split into 4 parts. Part 4 is probably going to be a little on the shorter end of things, I expect. But in Part 1, we're going to be talking about general rules for parts, how they're formed, why we're using them, and then Parts 4, how they're used on books, audiobooks, and serials. In Part 2, because this has played a really important role in how things have developed in the last year, we're going to talk just about parts on video discs, what that looks like, how to use them. In Part 3, then we'll talk about reporting, housekeeping efforts, and I'll be talking about the recombination project, which we've tried to talk about on the lists, but I'm not sure has always quite percolated through. So hopefully we'll be able to answer some questions on all of that today. So I am going to actually hand over control, if you will request it, to Mary Kay, and she's going to take us through Part 1.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Parts are essential to Evergreen cataloging because they complete the goal that we all have, and that is not to impress other catalogers. That is to serve our patrons. And parts give us a way to do that. On the general rules for parts, we use parts for holds. We create parts to allow us to provide better access for our patrons. First of all, a monographic part in Evergreen is a label that defines and identifies a portion of the complete holding described by a bibliographic record, when that portion is made available separately from other portions of the record. It's a divider. It's a way for us to accurately illustrate the separate parts of a whole body of work so that patrons may place holds on those separate parts. We use this function in a non-traditional manner, and we do it to enhance the whole process within Evergreen, pardon me, because we are a service system. And I keep stressing that because I've had to explain this to my staff several times, and I have new staff that have just learned about parts and are captivated with the variety of parts available out there or that they can see. Why parts? Well, it's all about the holds, man. That is a perfect statement for me today because I am struggling with some pain issues today, and that makes it perfect. The goal is for placing holds, and this screen shows a variety of examples or choices. For instance, for the series Third Rock from the Sun, the TV show Third Rock from the Sun. We have the complete series, and you can select a part. So a patron can see seasons 1 and 2, all discs, season 3, all discs, or just season 1, all discs. It allows the patron to choose what he or she wants. So it makes them more independent, but it gives them better access to specifically what they want without staff intervention. This is crucial right now because so many of our patrons are using our online hold system without any staff intervention. So far, the reality is a little different. This is a hold screen, and it shows the title of the film, Bloodshot, and it shows the variety. So any unassigned item could be anything. That's most of us. About 52% of us, about 50% of us have any unassigned items. You can select, patron can select Blu-ray, DVD, 4K Blu-ray, or a combo pack. And Anna's going to talk about combo packs later because I'm still kind of reeling with combo packs as well. Parts are essential for serials. It allows us to make our periodicals available in an online venue by copy. We have not really had that option before. For those of us that have used the old Demco serial check-in cards, this is the next level of serials check-in. You can take, for instance, the periodical Chop Chop, and you can create parts for it. Actually, if you're cataloging them, you can create parts, but as a patron, you can select those parts and specifically what issues you want. So that allows, again, more control for the collection, but allows the patron better access to the materials we have available. This is a lovely record. Thank you, Josephine, for sending this nightmare. This is a perfect example of some, it's Time Magazine, and it shows the construction of all the different parts. We have 3 years here from 2017 through 2020, and there are some duplications, which Anna will discuss later, but this allows the patron to specifically check the item they want. When we catalog our serials, we always use parts. When we catalog our video discs, we always use parts. We sometimes use parts when we catalog books or audiobooks. There are specific rules, but we never use parts for serial tracking. If you have VC
Series tracking.
Series tracking, thank you. It's the medication. For series tracking, say you have every VC Andrews book ever written and there are 3 or 4 series involved, do not use parts to track those series. It's not what parts are created for, and it becomes very difficult to define each item as a part. We don't use parts to manage our equipment. And we don't use parts anytime it restricts hold placement for a single item. Our main uses for parts, again, are serials and video discs. Now, this shows who can do what. If you're Cat 1, you can do everything. You can create parts, you can apply parts, but you can edit them, and we're going to talk about part editing. You can merge them, which I have never done, but I'm going to talk about today. And you can delete parts, and there will be times when you will need to delete parts, when you have a non-traditional part or an incorrectly composed part that you want to delete it, you want to hide it, you don't want any other catalogers to see it. I've done that. And Cat 2, which I normally work in Cat 2 just because it's quicker and faster for me, we can create parts and apply parts as Cat 2 catalogers. And those are the 2 most frequently used functions in parts. Parts are assigned to holdings in the holdings editor. It's the easiest way to assign them. And you can access the holding editors for selected items using the edit call numbers and items action and the item status in the holdings view of the catalog through the drop-down menu. Or you can click on the edit link of the holding in the OPAC view. And parts are assigned in a drop-down menu at the end of each holding line. So if you come over here to the end of the holding line, drop down that menu. You will find, in a lot of cases, a list of the available parts that you can use to assign your particular item. You can assign parts beginning from item status. So I'm an old hotkey fan, so if I F5 this and drop down my item status, or if I go into cataloging and drop down my item status, I can use the actions drop-down screen and pull up call numbers and items, and that will allow me to edit my parts. So we're going to go to call numbers and items for this item. So from the holdings view, you can select edit, and the second step is to click on show holdings detail button for the editor to open this option. You can create parts on the fly in the holdings editor if the appropriate part simply does not exist. Type in the new parts label into the part box at the end of the holdings line, and this can only be used for a single assignment until the part is saved with the item. Then it's available for other holdings. This is what I see quite a lot. If you go to the far right-hand side of the screen and you have the parts drop-down menu here, if there are no parts assigned, when you click on it to drop it down, you're going to get this little skinny box. That little skinny box is a real source of frustration with me. If you are assigning a new part, you need to double-click in the parts box so that the whole box is highlighted. Then you can type in the part format as is correctly defined in our cataloging procedures. And we'll talk about that later too, but we do have a quite detailed list of parts and correct formats and syntax for parts. So in this first panel, in the top panel, we see that there's a Blu-ray for this particular DVD set or DVD, and here there's nothing assigned in the part. In the bottom screen, that part has been assigned, and it's assigned as Blu-ray. Every DVD, every video disc needs to have a part assigned. And I was hoping for a screen that I didn't get. So
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Because I want our viewers to see how it plays out in the OPAC on the patron end of things. So we'll get there, promise. Mm-hmm. In creative parts in the monographic parts editor, this is when you already have the items cataloged. And I just used this week, and I really, really like it. I can go to the tab Monographic Parts Editor. Now, most of us when we catalog, we're using the OPAC view, Mark Edit, Mark View. These three tabs are the ones I use a lot when cataloging. And when doing corrective work, I use the holdings view. But monographic parts allows us to assign a monographic part on the fly rather quickly, and it's a very expeditious way to get that part assigned. Here there's no part assigned for this item, but by adding that label in this screen, you can save it, and then it will show the parts involved on the left-hand side in the monographic parts panel. So using the monographic parts tab in your cataloging function gives you that nice listing of monographic parts. I think this feature is just incredible. If I want to add an item to monographic parts, I come over here and, for instance, click, it brings this up and this next screen up and allows me to add it at that point. So it's a very user-friendly, quick add. There's not a lot of stumbling around trying to figure out how it works, and it doesn't change. I used it this last week in getting ready for this webinar and really was like, I could just do this all day long. It was such a nice feature.
And I'll pop in just for a second to say,
Please do.
one of the things that I love about this and why I would use this instead of the on-the-fly option is if you're in a situation where you have branches, so you end up with multiple copies. If you do the on-the-fly option, you either have to type it in for every branch you have, and sometimes that fails because the system's like, that's a duplicate, you can't have it. So if you've got multiple copies of anything and you need to add that part up front, doing it from the editor is fantastic because then you can go to Holdings View and just assign them all without having to recreate anything.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I was
I'm
getting a
also-
little tongue-tied as well.
I'm sorry. Can I just also
Please.
say well, I know we haven't gotten to serials yet, but this is what the catalog, the copy catalog that does our magazines for us. I say, look at the monographic parts first, see if there's one has been created. If there has, you're good. If there hasn't, create it, and then you can just go in and add the holdings to the magazines.
Yeah, it gives you the listing of.
Because she does them for all of our branches, and it just makes the adding the holdings a little smoother.
It does.
Can I pop in for just 1 second as well? I've already popped in. I don't know why I asked.
Pop back in.
One thing that I try to say during all of our trainings is that there is the capability to do a lot of things in here, including create parts on the fly, but on the fly things generally should be reserved for when you have to do them on the fly. If you can plan ahead and you can use these interfaces like the monographic parts or monograph parts interface, it causes you to slow down just a little bit and be more thoughtful about what you're doing, and that's a great thing.
Yes, that's a very good point. What I like about using the monographic parts in the holdings editor is that it shows me what parts already exist, so I'm not duplicating work and I'm not creating a non-compliant format.
Yes.
It does help show up.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. And
Yes.
Sarah Childs commented that it makes for a very good workflow, which cataloging is all about the workflow. We know what we're doing, but we have to have our own pattern and our own trail that we follow. Monica just added, it also helps to look at them ahead of time to see if they are duplicates that should be merged.
Ooh, timely.
Which is a great point. Great point, because we do have, unfortunately, a lot of non-traditional duplication that we'll be talking about later, doing some housework on.
This particular one is a great example of a really nice part that doesn't actually fit our style guide.
Yes, it is, because
it's nice and clear, but
it's nice and clear, but if you look, we have all discs -DVD with all capitalized and discs capitalized. Then we have all discs with discs in lowercase -DVD, which number 3 is actually the preferred format. We have disc 1, disc 1-2, disc 1-3-DVD. So that whole variety is a good example of some merger work. Like everyone else here this morning, I want to manage my own materials. But when I look at this, I have to watch myself because it makes me want to manage everybody else's too. The easiest cleanup would be right here with all discs in merging. Enough said about that. I'm going to go on with editing parts. Again, double click on the part you edit. That opens the editor modal, and then enter your updates and click on save. Easy peasy. The part will be updated without disturbing any existing holds. That's huge. So, for instance, here we have DVD episodes 1 through 4, and it needs to be disc. It needs to be edited to what's on the right, disc 1-4-DVD. That allows it to sort. It makes it easier for patrons to scroll through and see exactly what it is they want. And it provides that uniformity that we're looking for to give us the ability to label parts, but to label them in a compliant and standard method.
And I'll mention here, in this particular case, I was able to do episodes 1 through 4 becomes discs 1 through 4 because the rest of the record supported that. So keep that in mind when you're editing. Sometimes you have to spend some time in the MARC record to figure out what exactly is on what if you're going to be adding or editing parts.
Well, and truthfully, you should always spend time in the MARC record.
Of course.
Yes, just so you understand the item. If you don't have the item in hand, the MARC record is going to be the best detail that you have for determining discs and parts. Merging parts. You're going to have to help me here, Anna.
Sure.
Okay. Duplicate parts need to be merged when they're discovered. It says they should be. They need to be. Duplicate parts are generally created when incorrect syntax is used based on our style rules.
Yeah.
And merging those duplicate parts preserves the information already attached to the owning record, but it cleans up the record for ease of use of both our circulation staff and our patrons. That's the end result we want.
Yep. Our end result is to make sure that patrons have access to as much as possible by selecting the appropriate part.
Yes. Yes. And that patrons get what they want. And I think we've all had experience with making a request, placing a hold, and getting something different than what we had visually and intellectually imagined.
Mm-hmm.
And I can't express the frustration that goes with that. Parts equal satisfied clients, satisfied customers, satisfied patrons. So this is a huge part of making sure our work is correct. Merging duplicate parts, again, preserves the information already attached to the owning record. So if there's holes on the owning record, it preserves those holes. Select the parts that you wish to merge and click on the Merge Selected button that you see in the editor screen. So we're going to be merging these two DVD labels. So we have two separate part labels here. One is DVD all in caps and one is lowercase DVD. And of course, all in caps is the preferred method of labeling that we want to use. Nancy, you're my queen. You're working on editing parts while you're watching this. Bless your heart. So you click on the prevailing item and the parts will be merged. This may disrupt some holds initially, but Anna tells us we're running daily reports and retargeting holds on deleted parts at the State Library.
Yeah.
So
when a part's merged, it's deleted. So it generally takes us about 24 hours to get those retargeted to the correct part, but we are doing that for you. So you don't have to worry about that. The most it should delay any patron is about 24 hours.
Thank you. And when you create that merger, then the non-compliant or the non-uniform part is then deleted. So you don't have to worry about doing any record cleanup.
And I guess I didn't actually say this. When the parts are merged, the part is non-compliant part is deleted, but the preferred part is assigned to all your holdings.
Monica Boyer is asking, will that report run daily through the parts project, or will it run daily forever?
We will. It may not get daily attention once we get to a certain critical mass, because right now it's something that Bob has to do manually every morning. And if we get to the point where we are starting to have lots of days with no deleted parts in the mix, we'll probably start stretching it out a little bit. But I anticipate it will continue to be run on a consistent basis as long as it's needed. It's possible we may, I know this, I think think this is listed as an active bug. It may also be possible that we'll see a patch go through that will automatically fix that.
Ooh, I like that.
Yes, we would
Yes.
too.
Yes, exactly, root patches.
So yeah, but for right now, we're doing it. We're intervening in the database itself. So
Okay.
there's actually some development coming that is definitely on the way, which may also have an effect. So, but we'll get to that in a little bit. All right.
Okay. I'm trying to move along.
Okay, I will go ahead and move us then.
Thank you. Merging and editing parts cleans up our files and makes it a better experience for our patrons and our circulation staff. When you look at these two parts maintenance screens and you're thinking of working in a public arena and a patron coming in saying, I want season 2 of True Blood, do you want to look at the screen on the left or the screen on the right? The screen on the left has a lot of non-compliant parts, 21 parts to be exact, and the screen on the right has so many. It actually has 8 items. So there's seasons 1 through 6, all discs. That's the whole series, or that's 6 seasons, a rather large container. We have a season or a part of just bonus materials, and bonus materials is the standard format. And then we have seasons 1 through 6, each in an individual part of its own. As someone who works with the public intermittently, I would much rather look at the right-hand screen with 8 parts than the left-hand screen with 21 parts. And SEAS1, SEAS1, that's, I understand. I've used abbreviations in my 40 years in libraries, but by spelling the word out, it makes it much easier, much more uniform, and visually it makes it faster to read through that list for both the staff member and the patron. So that's our goal, better experience for patrons. Anna, what's on the next slide? Uh-oh.
Warning time.
Warning, Will Robinson. When merging or editing parts, be careful and thoughtful when observing their implementation. In the last example, a lot of libraries have used the all discs-DVD part for single seasons, and that required updates to reflect on the actual holding that was being circulated. Please notify libraries if their holdings require updating due to the assigned part not being accurate. Different libraries manage things different ways. True confession time, I have 20 employees and every one of them asks why a library would only circulate disc 1 and disc 2 of a television series. And I said, because that's kind of what's viewable in a week's circulation time, and it allows for more access to the actual item. And my binge watchers here in Newton County all say, but I want the whole season because I want to watch every episode of whatever it is forever. Parts allows us to not dictate how each individual library governs its collections. Yes, but parts allows us to more thoughtfully and usefully categorize and make accessible all our collections.
We've got a question about
Yes,
when you use the season label. And you are correct, Amanda. You are only going to use the season label if there is more than one season on the record. So if it's a bibliographic record for a single season that was released independently of all the other seasons, you don't include season information in the part. And we'll talk about that more later.
Deleting parts. First, we recommend not deleting parts outright as it may negatively impact other libraries' holdings and or holds. An automated cleanup script is run weekly to purge unused monographic parts, and I'm assuming this is another one of Bob Jackson's. And Bob Jackson is royalty in my book for a lot of the things that he does. So,
Actually, it's something that Jason designed before he left.
okay, so
and it's
Jason,
fully automated, which is what hopefully we'll be able to do one of these days with Bob's project.
so there's no intercession. Yes.
No.
And it purges unused monographic parts. So if we have parts with no items assigned to them, it cleans them up. Manual deletion is only recommended if the part was created entirely in error and does not belong on the record at all. That means there are no holdings attached to it. It's just a mistake.
A good example of that would be where someone has gotten confused when cataloging and accidentally put series information in as a part.
Yes. That is a very good explanation because, again, series information doesn't belong in parts.
Mm-hmm.
So we see in the lower screen, delete selected. So you would select the part that you want to delete, then select delete selected. Questions so far? So next we have keeping it stylish, and I believe, Anna, I'm going to turn that over to you. Am I correct?
Okay, sure. That's great. All right, so what we're going to be talking about next is the style guide. The cataloging committee, I want to thank them again. They spent weeks working with me this spring and into early summer, working on this, defining how we wanted to put this together so that it made the most possible sense without cluttering up things any more than they needed to be. So some of these rules actually go back to the very beginning of when we started using parts, and some of them you're going to see are a little newer as we have determined what the actual needs are in our catalogs. So no abbreviations, and there's an asterisk on this. I'll get to that in a minute. You're going to use numerals. Do not spell out numbers. You aren't going to do it O-N-E. It's going to be the digit 1 anytime there's a number. Use singular terms with a couple of exceptions. You're going to use dashes and not ampersands. We use sentence case, which means the first word of each section is capitalized, except for proper nouns, and otherwise it's all lowercase. And we ask that you be as specific as possible while still keeping it reasonable. And we'll talk about what that looks like here in a second. So for our exceptions, when you're doing serials, months are abbreviated. That is the one and only time we want to see abbreviations. So no V period, no SEAS period. We're just going to spell it out so that it's easy for people to read. And with the singular terms, all discs is our exception. And how all discs appears or is suffixed then depends on the material type. So we have the book piece. Now we're going to talk about how this applies to books. Books, the monographic part, this is what it was developed for. We don't actually have a lot of use for it in the Evergreen Indiana catalog, although there are some use cases that are certainly more popular than others. It is used with book records where there are multiple volumes and they are unique, and you want to be able to pick and choose between those individual volumes. When a volume name is available, we encourage you to use that. So you have a volume from an encyclopedia. Your part might look like B-CA for one that represents entries starting with B and running through CA. Maybe you have a multi-volume reference set that is actually numbered volumes. You'll have volume and the digit 1. An annual guidebook that is on a serialized record might have the 2020 date to distinguish it from previous year's editions. A collected fiction box set. What I've chosen here, for example, because it's one that has been sold frequently in box sets, is The Lord of the Rings. So Return of the King, if you're circulating it separately, might have its own part, even though the books are all on the same record. And then manga is probably our biggest uptake right now when it comes to books and monograph parts. And we were discussing ahead of the webinar starting, that some manga really lend themselves to parts and some don't. If the only thing that's unique about your manga is the volume and number, it may work really well for your library to go ahead and put them on a shared record. If each volume in the manga also has its own title, that may be better. It's entirely up to you though, so we encourage you to pay attention, particularly when you're looking at records, so that you make sure that if you do need to invalidate the ISBN or UPC, that you are getting that information set up so that whether you have parts or not, the materials are always going to be clear to the patron what they're getting in the end.
Anna, this is Mary Kay. With manga, it doesn't have to apply to all the manga your library holds either. We have manga series where each volume has an individual title. The series I was discussing this morning before this program began is the series, the set name is Princess Resurrection. The problem is the only different designation is the volume number and the cover art. And since I can't descriptively catalog the cover art as well as probably it should be, using the volume number and attaching all these volumes to one catalog record and parting it out makes it much easier for the patron to use and easier for our staff to follow.
Absolutely. So, like I say, it's relatively rare in our catalog right now, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't consider it when you are looking at cataloging a book set. With audiobooks, sometimes they've got a lot to say on the matter, and that's the one and only time you're really going to worry about whether or not you need a part with an audiobook. I know this made an appearance in the last couple of weeks on the listserv again. If you are putting the complete Archangel Shakespeare in the catalog on a single record, you're going to want to part it. If you're cataloging a Diana Gabaldon novel, you probably are going to have to consider parts. But by and large, they're exceedingly rare in the Evergreen Indiana catalog and should stay that way. We're not going to use an all discs part on a record that only has 10 discs. You're not going to be splitting those up into separate packages, so you do not need to worry about that. The only time you're going to do it is when you have multiple packages containing parts or elements of that same recording separated, that you're circulating separately. If there is a volume name associated with it, you'll use that, and that's only in the case of publisher-provided volumes. So the first scenario is actually our preference for very long audiobooks that have been broken into separate packages. If they're unnamed, then you're just going to use the disc part to describe. If you have one where the publisher has provided a name, you can use that, but please be sure to add a 500 note so that it's clear both to patrons who are a little more savvy and know to check out those notes to figure out what they're getting, and to staff so that they know which discs are included. If you see a record that has both, I would recommend switching out the parts. You might reach out to the other libraries that have the holdings and determining to switch to the disc plus count entry, because if half of the libraries have holdings with volume 1 and volume 2 and the others have discounts, it gets to be problematic. If it turns out the discounts are exactly the same, you can just merge those parts and everybody's on the volume. If you have multiple titles which you are splitting up and circulating separately, then if you're putting each element on an entirely different record, like in the case of the Archangel Shakespeare, when I look at that in our catalog, what the libraries have done is they've taken each recording and created its own separate bibliographic record rather than having them on a shared record. In that case, you're going to have potentially all discs if that's relevant. Probably not, though. You're probably going to be able to assume that it's all discs and it will be unnecessary to add a part. But if you are circulating those elements off of the same record, then you'll want to name them. So with the Chronicles of Narnia, we've got the Voyage of the Dawn Treader as a separate part. Does For serials then, we actually started using Monograph parts with serials a lot earlier than in some other areas. And so this is a common feature. If you don't catalog or circulate your magazines, it's less of an issue. Pardon the pun. But it might still be something helpful to add to your workflow when you're cataloging them, if you catalog them but don't circulate them. So if you don't catalog them, it doesn't matter. Obviously, they're not in the system, so there's nothing to worry about. And I will mention most dailies like newspapers. As far as I know, nobody's actually cataloging and barcoding newspapers. If you are, would you say something in chat? I would love to hear how that's going, but I haven't seen anybody do that. So it's primarily magazines, journals, things that come out at most on a weekly basis. For day ranges on the style guide front, you're only going to use the initial date. So if you have a weekly or bi-weekly, it's going to be, you're just going to pick that first day. I should have actually copied that one slide that showed Time Magazine and put it in here, because that's a great place to see where, we've got 6 different parts for the same week's magazine. And it all comes down to style in the end. So with constructing the part, we have tables that have lots of examples showing you what each of these would look like in the procedures guide. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. We've got links for that at the end of the show today. But basically, you're always going to start with the year. If it's dated, it's going to have a year first, followed by the month information in numerals, 2 digits, the month abbreviation in parentheses, and if it is a weekly or a bi-weekly, then you'd include the day information. First day if there's a date range, and both digits. So if it's released today, August 4th, it would be 2020 08 AUG 04. If you have scenarios where you have crossovers, then we use slashes to help define those. And I have examples of these. With quarters, those will be named. If it's actually a named issue, those are named as well. And then most recently, and this is something that was just approved this spring, if you have one that doesn't actually list dates on it, some scholarly journals, for example, don't do this. And I'm seeing this with print periodicals out of other countries where they don't put date information on it. It's just volume and issue number. So in that case, you won't have a year on it, but you will make sure that your volume information and issue information is consecutive. So, like say, you've seen a lot of this. A lot of you are already working with this on a regular basis. So I will ask, does anybody have any questions about any of these scenarios? And thank you to Sarah for popping in about the newspapers. But yeah, I think that kind of speaks to it. Question, do you include a date if dates are given on multi-month issues? And generally, we've said no, because that level of detail is not significant. If you've got something that, like here, I suppose it's June 1 through July 30, you are already clear on what the range of that material is. And if you have, what do you do with a double issue? Well, is it a named double issue? Is it a double issue that crosses multiple months? Double issue with multiple months, you can go ahead and use the bi-monthly standard. If it's a named issue, you could go, okay, for those of you who can't see what the question is, the example of a double issue is August 3rd / August 10th. You still just use the first date. So it would be everything up to through the August in parentheses 03. So With Time Magazine, where that was a 2-week issue, we're just going to use this first option here. And that's one of the reasons why this is also mentioned for a biweekly. Even if it isn't natively produced as a biweekly, it will function as a biweekly when choosing your style. Does that make sense? Great. And I just wanted to follow up on this because this was a fun discussion, but it was very short on the listserv. What are your thoughts then if a publisher does try to get clever with their named issues? I think our final judgment on Jawgist was to follow the traditional bi-monthly, but anybody have any other comments you'd like to share? Recommendations for the cataloging committee to ponder? It certainly makes it sort more easily, so I just thought I'd throw that in because that was a very fun conversation. And if we do run into oddball situations, that's how our policies and style guides grow. So keep in touch as you discover those with some of the lesser known publications out there. Somebody merged the parts the wrong direction in Anita's case. So you can update the part to actually match the style guide when that happens. And sometimes that's one of the goals here with our program today is to get everybody on the same page, because sometimes it's been a little while. I had to actually look up the inter-year bi-monthly option because it had been so long since I was trying to catalog anything along those lines. So, all right. Well, it took us a little bit longer than I'd anticipated, so I would like to go ahead and shift off to a break. I'd like to thank Mary Kay for helping out, doing so much of the first section here.
You are welcome. Thank you for all your hard work on this, because Anna did the presentation. She did the actual PowerPoint.
Just trying to give us a structure. So I would say we'll go ahead, take a break, and we will come back in about 5 minutes, according to my computer. That's going to make it about 10:59. But go ahead, get up, stretch out, and we'll be right back.
All right. Well, part 2, parts on video disc. If everybody's ready, here we go. Okay. I first started, I started using probably an introduction to parts was when we started doing TV series, and some libraries do the whole season, some libraries do just one disc or just parts of the disc, and I think that's where parts were really, you really notice them being important. Because if they weren't assigned, then, a patron putting a hold on, it was just a surprise what they got. Like, oh, I only got disc 5 and 6. Well, that's why that was a real introduction, that's why parts were so important. Anyway, why do all video discs get parts now? Oops. It simplifies the workflows. The staff always knows, the cataloging staff always knows to add a part. They don't have to evaluate other releases of material that aren't locally owned. And patrons know always to pick a part when placing a hold. That's probably the most important piece of this, is that if patrons have that consistency, we all know patron education, that can be tricky, but if they have that consistency, they'll get used to seeing that and go, oh, if I pick any unassigned item, I don't know what I'm going to get, but if I pick a part, I'm going to get exactly what I want. And also the deduplication, mismerges and record, if a part is already on a video disc, if those DVD Blu-ray records get merged somehow, that part is still going to exist for that item. Again, simplifying the hold. That information is retained, and that just makes it easier. And it also makes more, if everybody assigns a part, that means that more items are available to transit. Okay, video disc pieces, the general rules. Okay, disc is spelled with a C, not a K. You always use, use the singulars except when you do all disc. So, disc 1 and 2, not disc 1 and 2. The final component of the entry should contain the format information. So at the end of that information, it says DVD or Blu-ray, and just keep it simple. Don't include more information than is needed. And format, you can find format examples, the table of format examples in the cataloging procedures manual, and that starts on around page 25. You'll start seeing all of those tables of examples. Okay, composing a video disc part. This is kind of what you're seeing on your screen is kind of the workflow. The season number, the volume part number, the disc number, and then the format, or just the name or the name in a format, which we'll get into in a little bit. So I mean, when you're doing a TV series, all or part of this is going to be part of how you do that. Create that part. Okay, just enough and no more. Keep it simple. Only include part label elements if the catalog materials on that record can differ on that point of information. The record for a single season is a record for just a single season of a TV series. The season information you don't need to add that. Like, if the only reason you need to add this, the only time you need to add the season is if it's a complete series records where all the seasons are on a one mark record. But if it's just season 1 or season 2 of a season, you just can do your all disc DVD or your disc numbers in the DVD. And if there are some, well, like not just TV, but TV, there's very few TV series, like season, a certain season may only have one disc, then you only need the DVD, but you're going to see that more often with just, the movies, not TV series. Okay, all disc versus the combo pack. When is all really all? Okay, all disc, that is for all disc if there's 2 or more discs for a TV series or a movie. That's when it's all. That's when you need to use all disc. Like like a Star Wars movie might have 2 discs.
Lord of the Rings.
Lord of the Rings. I think that the new Harley Quinn movie had 2 discs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you would use the all disc dash DVD. And also, and you can see the next example, season 1 all disc Blu-ray. That's an example that would be for a TV series that's on a multi-season record. Third Rock from the Sun was an example we had earlier. That was a record that had all 6 seasons of the series. So like if each season was packaged separately, it'd be season 1 all disc DVD. But then can also, like, if you, like, the season 1 had 4 discs it could be season 1, disc 1 and 2 DVD. So however your library packages them. Now, combo pack is, which we're seeing, which is also another reason why we're adding parts to all the video discs, Blu-rays, is because for quite some time, you know, a lot of libraries buy the Blu-ray and DVD in a combo pack, and some libraries circulate those together and some libraries circulate those separately. And those records, and at many times those records the DVD and Blu-ray record would be created separately rather than a combo pack record. But we're finding that if we create a combo pack record and add parts to those items, then it also makes the catalog easier to search through, because you're instead of finding 3 or 4 results, you're just finding one with all of those combinations on there. And this should, and when you do and you can see the examples on the combo pack, how you need to format that. If you're like this, the first one, the Blu-ray / DVD, that library is circulating those together, the Blu-ray and the DVD, or you can see the 4K and the Blu-ray and the Blu-ray and the DVD. And if you're circulating those separately and it's only a single disc, you just use that format of either DVD or Blu-ray. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay, video disc smidgens. Okay. Which we're back to television series, which to me that's kind of it's one of the more critical ones, or not critical, confusing ones. Okay, so again, seasoning parts can seem complicated, but it's really not, because we're just breaking it down into multi-season records, season single records, or a single season with a volume and a part record. So multi-season records as we said, this is a record that has 2 or more seasons of a television series on one mark record, and this is dependent on how your library circulates those items, whether you do it all of the seasons all together, just as in one package as one circulation, or if you do a single season with all the disc, or a season with just part of the disc. But that is where you want to use, that's on these multi-season records is where you want to use seasons. On the single season records, the record is only for one season of the series, so you're either going to use which disc you're circulating, or all the disc, or as in the third example, the volume 1, disc 1, and that's only if it's relevant. But and then the single season volume part record, this you don't see as often, but it describes if a season is split into 2 records, which I've seen with Perry Mason. Because we just got Perry Mason donated, and I've seen that.
Recently, Murder, She Wrote made an appearance with, not Murder, She Wrote, Diagnosis Murder made an appearance with that on the listservs not too long ago.
Okay, yes, Perry made, and that's which is just interesting, because that just came up. So this is where you're using to depart, I've got season 1, volume 1, season 1, volume 2. They're 2 separate records. So you need these parts to further, clarify which item is circulating. Okay, video disc bobs, name disc. This is when you have a set of movies, like you can see an example. The Hunger Games is a good example. It is on one mark record, but there are separate discs that a library may circulate as one item, or they may circulate separately. And name disc, they can tell a story, and it may mean what you think it means. Names are only entered if there are multiple discs on the records, and the content may only be distinguished by using a name. Names should be used as they appear on the disc, and if a television series discs are named and numbered, follow the guidelines for the television series.
Generally, if they're named, you want to go to the television series and use the series information, skipping or not skipping the season information depending on how it's packaged. Because a lot of times I notice TV series will say things like season 4 on the disc, but if it's only the season 4 in the package and on the record, you don't need to include that information.
This can also be used for multi-disc sets with varying aspect ratios or cuts of the same film, like a director's cut or the extended version, something like that. It also may be if you're going to check out the feature film and the bonus feature separately, that's also a time that can be used. Let's see, the name disc, I had an example of the record called up. Yes, this was a good example because you can see there are 4 discs in this package, and the libraries are checking them out separately, but they have the name of the movie on the part. So when someone's placing a hold, they know they're going to get 7 Brides for 7 Brothers rather than a surprise.
That's also a beautiful example of uniformity.
And also, look, there's no any unassigned item. All the parts have been assigned. That's a beautiful thing too. Okay, so ultimately, context is everything. Pieces, smidgens, bibs, and bobs all add up. If you're not sure where to start, look at the record. A single disc record only ever needs to have the format part entry. So, like if it's just a single Blu-ray, a single DVD, you don't need to do all you need to do is DVD or Blu-ray. If there is more than one disc, how many ways may holdings be broken up on that record? Your part should accommodate clarity at the finest level. So, all disc, bonus features, all of those kind of things. If you think any information would have been helpful for you when evaluating the bib for creating or applying parts, please add a note with that information. As you can see in the examples, Volume 1 contains disc 1 through 4. Volume 2 contains disc 5 through 8. Blu-ray disc includes both theatrical and unrated releases of the film. The DVD disc contains a standard theatrical release. So whatever you think would make the patron experience better. Okay, so we've got some more examples. Do this, not this. So you want to do season 1 and 2, all disc DVD, not the ampersand, not writing each disc out. Disc 1 through 4, Blu-ray. No all caps, Blu-ray disc 1 through 4. Season 3, Part 2, disc 1 and 2, DVD. And here we don't want to do those abbreviations. And then the combo pack, when you're circulating them together, you want to specify that it's a combo pack and then the format, not the DVD and Blu-ray. And this director's unrated cut with the 4K Blu-ray is a lot more descriptive than a 4K disc one. And if you just have a DVD, please don't leave it. Please don't leave it blank. Please put in DVD.
And I will mention, these are actually all examples I pulled from the catalog because elements of this have launched at different times. we are coming together to come to a more standardized option. So if you're looking at one of these and going, oh no, I have this look like that in my library, it's okay. We only just finished the style guide a month and a half ago. So we appreciate all of the work that you're doing, and we'll continue to appreciate the work you do as you continue helping or working together to clean things up.
And go ahead.
There will be no flogging.
This is Mary Kay. I serve on the cataloging committee, and some of these examples of not this are from my library. We'll get there.
Yeah, and that's why, having those examples from the procedures guide is also very helpful. And just remember, try to remember that if on a record, if only one library does not assign a part, you get that dreaded any unassigned item choice. And conversely, if only one library does assign a part and no one else does, you're going to get that part and then the any unassigned item. So what the ultimate goal is to have that any unassigned item not show up anywhere, so that again the patrons and the circulation staff are used to seeing this. They know, okay, I can pick which part I want. If everyone's assigning parts, then everyone's items have either there's more availability for transiting, and it makes things more available for the patrons.
And I have to agree with Sarah. The old parts maybe don't fit the style. It's so much easier to upgrade them if they're good and clear. So
yes.
we definitely appreciate all the work people have done to be clear with their parts over the years.
Yes, absolutely. So I know I kind of went through things really quickly, but does anyone have any questions?
Well, so I will thank Jennifer very much for presenting this and going over this. I know it's been one aspect of things that has been in great upheaval, and getting up to speed on all of the recent changes has been a lot of extra work for her, and I appreciate her doing that. Okay, part 3 then is going to be the reporting and sort of a where we are kind of thing. Where are we now? The answer to this is what you're seeing is actually a graph of the progress we've made since the cataloging committee officially approved the move to adding parts to our entire video disc collection. We started off at the beginning of June with just under 100,000 discs with parts, and that was the work of years working with getting particularly TV series in the system and parted out. But as you can see, we have made a tremendous amount of progress in the last 2 months. I mean, I'm absolutely amazed. When the cataloging committee was talking about this and whether or not it was time to finally pull the trigger on it, the number one concern was just how long this was going to take. And you guys have actually tripled the amount of discs with parts in just 2 months. So we still have a ways to go, but it has been awesome to watch. In the last week, I was very pleased because I was able to work with Bob, and we were able to auto-assign parts to about 100,000 discs. So that's what these two jumps are here. This was 1 day's work, and this was the second day's work. It was an interesting challenge to isolate, and I'm not sure that we'll be able to do any big groups like this again just because of logistics. I will tell you that what those two groups were DVDs in various, or where the records were in various states, where it was a single disc record from between 1997 and 2006. In 2006 is when Blu-rays launched, so we couldn't guarantee that the record was going to be for a DVD at that point. So these all just got the DVD part, but that's 100,000 records that we don't have to go back and do manually. So yay, thanks to Bob for that. And that all adds up to 48%. We are almost at the halfway mark actually tomorrow will be 2 months. So that is a tremendous amount of work, and I want to thank you all very much for just diving in. I actually have a couple of reports, and I can see that several libraries are almost finished with their conversions already. And others of you have just been making tremendous progress. I know some people have been waiting for the training so that they were on really firm ground with what they were going to be doing. So we look forward to seeing all of your work here in the next few months. And we'll see, maybe we'll get it all done by the end of the year. That would be amazing. In the process of doing that, we have a couple of reports that I've created that you can use to try to keep track of which of your holdings still need attention. There are multiple things that are playing into the situation generally before you even get to reporting, although you can fix some of it with reporting. First up, circ mods may be missing or wrong. That is one thing that I have noticed a lot. I've been doing a lot of work on these myself. And so I recommend that if you haven't done it recently, either run it yourself or talk to whoever your in-house reports person is to run one of the missing circulation modifier reports and get parts on any of those holdings. Video discs on VHS records. This is surprisingly more common than you might think. A lot of times they're left over from when you migrated in, but you do want to keep an eye out for that because it is generally something that's relatively quick to update. So I would encourage you, all you have to do is just go to the OPAC and do a search for your library for VHS. That's one of the item format filters you can use and see what comes back. If you have VHS, you'll want to throw a quick eye over your holdings to make sure that the VHS are actually VHS. If you don't have VHS, well then everything that comes back is going to need attention. What is a good missing circ mod report? Well, I have opinions on that based on what I have written, but it's up to you really. Whoops, nope, wrong menu. Personally, I like, well, you can see all of my mess now. In my housekeeping folder, there is one specifically for list of items with missing circulation modifier. This was one that I actually wrote for a conference a couple of years ago based on some requests we'd gotten. And the only thing I will tell you is it's going to be absolutely everything at your library. But yeah, if you use the one in my housekeeping folder, that will get you there. And to Christy's point, that does happen. And typically the number one reason for that is older records that just need some help. So there's not a really fast and easy way to find those records where part of the record has been converted for DVD use, but it doesn't have the required fixed fields. So a lot of times you're just going to have to deal with them as you find them. And yes, frequently they can be merged. It's not a big deal for you to go ahead and just add those to another record. But it's helpful if you actually have the item in hand and know what you're looking at. And then the last general cleanup one is for video discs. And I've got a do you even laser disc because this seems to happen a lot where we have video disc records where they are actually video disc records, but they're 4 laser discs and they're 12 inches and not 12 centimeters. So this is another easy thing that you can look for without having to run any reports or anything like that. You can just search the catalog for DVDs at your library that have production dates prior to 1997, which is when DVDs were released in the US, or for Blu-rays prior to 2006. So far, the oldest DVD, quote-unquote DVD record I've found was for, I think, 1930. And I'm pretty sure that was not the case. Actually, I know the issue there was the dates had been swapped from when the movie was originally filmed. All right. So here are the two reports specifically for the VIDEODisc project. They are found in that same folder that we were just looking at. The location is spelled out right here. The first one is a list of absolutely everything in a specified shelving location, and it's going to tell you whether or not they have parts assigned. You could use this for, say, if you wanted to check for your manga to see if all of your manga, if that's an area where you use parts, you could use it for books as well. But here, all you need to do is put in whatever your shelving locations are for your video discs, and it will give you a list of everything so you can see even where you are as far as how much is done versus how much is finished. And then the second one will provide you a much more focused opportunity to just locate those materials that are on records where other libraries have put parts, but your materials don't have them. So I recommend trying both of them, seeing which ones give you the best data to work with up front. This is a nice one to see progress over time. This is a great one for figuring out what your next steps are and which items to tackle. Then we have the recombination project. There's been a bit of confusion about this. This is something that the cataloging committee approved back in March. And that was after a community survey that came back overwhelmingly in favor of combining combo pack records with the single format records. And the number one question I've gotten from staff is, why are we using combined records if my library only ever buys DVDs? And the answer to that is that first point over here. We have had years of time that people have spent re-separating these records. It is probably one of the most common things I see happen, other than large print, with mismerge emails on the listserv, where a new record's come in, it doesn't mark the UPC or ISBN as invalid, and suddenly things get mashed together. You've got multiple formats on the same record without anybody knowing what is what. So the decision was made, we're just going to combine those, have a single record, and then everybody puts their holdings on, every holding has parts, and we don't have to worry about a new library migrating in and not having invalidated ISBNs or UPCs. If their record merges, it's fine. We just need to go back and make sure they get parts. This should reduce the overall number of records that the community has to maintain, so you are having to look at a dozen records to try to figure out which one to update to, which one has what features that need to be added. A single record rather than 3 to 10 also makes it easier for patrons because they're not having to go through all of those different options to see where they can get what they want. This does, however, only affect records where combo packs are released, and we're doing that so that we have some unifying element. And I'm going to walk you through what it looks like. This is a movie that came out in 2020. Most of you have a copy of this movie in one format or another. There were 3 different releases. They all came out on the exact same day. The disc IDs are all identical consistently across the 3 records as far as they're contained. So Combo 1 has the Blu-ray 3D, a 4K Blu-ray, and a Blu-ray. Combo Pack 2 has a Blu-ray and DVD, and then the DVD was also sold separately. The first combo pack could technically be split onto 7 different records to accommodate each possible packaging option. The second combo pack has 3 different options, and then the DVD, that one's simple. Only one packaging option because there's just one disc. If, however, it'd been a 2-disc special feature or special edition, it could also have multiple parts. So we kept it simple because this is how this one actually presented. So with that option, we could have 10 different records, but we have one overlapping on each because the DVD found in this package is also found in this package, and the Blu-ray found in this package is also found in this package. So because those things tie together, they're being put together onto a single record. So now we have one record. It's all that catalogers have to worry about finding. It's all that patrons have to worry about finding. But all of these options are accommodated by that single record. So what about the bibs? How do we make the bibs descriptive in this scenario, since it is a somewhat non-traditional situation, particularly with the combination of combo packs? You're going to worry about IDs, you've got repeatable fields, and we've got cautions. I'm going to walk through each one of these. If you're creating a new combo or a combination record, make sure that you include and document all the available IDs. I had a question just this morning. My DVD UPC shows up on this combo record. Is this where I'm supposed to be putting my record, or do I need to bring in a new one? No, if your disc is a match, and you can verify that using the 024 or the 028, you go ahead and you can add your holdings to the record. Just make sure you get that part on. But you can see all of these have qualifiers explaining what they identify so that you know when you look at it with your discs in hand what you should be matching on. With repeatable fields, you're going to want to make sure that every place that there could be or exists a difference, you have a separate field. So in this case, because we've got 4 different formats, we have 4 different 300s, because each one of these will come up differently. This subfield 3 heading entry, pardon me, does appear in the catalog when you search. So it does show this to help differentiate with all the discs, because otherwise you could have anywhere between, in the last example, there were actually 2 Blu-rays. So you could have, do you have a record that says 5 video discs, one that says 1 video disc? This way you can define it for each format. Then any place else where you have differences, like in the 344s here, where each format has different sound qualities. You have those in separately. You have separate entries for the 347. With Blu-ray 3D, I'm going to be putting together a new icon. We'll hopefully roll that out in the upgrade. It may come slightly after. That will show so that people can see that in the catalog as well. But you'll need the 347 just like you do with the 4K UHD in order to get those icons to appear. Other repeatable fields are going to include the 538. You want to have a separate one of those for each format. You're already familiar with doing that. A lot of times if there is a traditional combo pack record that you've worked with, you'll have seen that already. The other thing to really watch is your 546s. Blu-ray, 4K Blu-rays in particular very commonly have a lot more languages than a standard Blu-ray, and certainly a DVD. So you'll want to keep an eye on that. And then you'll want to document special features. There was one of the combination records here recently, actually it turned out that the DVD special features actually varied depending on the discs. So some of those are going to be pulled out, and that's, you want to have all that information there so you can match correctly. Okay, notes. A combo pack has to have been released with overlapping content. So if stuff's only ever been released on a Blu-ray and DVD and those only ever came out separately, we're not recombining those. We're only doing it if there has been a combination pack at this point. We can revisit that if the community feels particularly strongly about the possibility of doing that, but for now we decided, or the cataloging committee, I should say, decided to restrict it to things that already had overlapping content for identification purposes. If you are going to merge and create a combo pack, recombine a combo pack record, watch for active title holds before you do it, and either get the other library to get that hold replaced before you merge it, or notify them as soon as possible so they can get it updated, because we don't want patrons to be inconvenienced by this cleanup as much as possible. Trying to space things out so they still get what they've requested. And if your holding fits, please use the combination record. You don't need to bring in a new bib. That kills the idea of resource sharing if everybody has separate bibs out there for every single thing. If there's an accident and stuff gets merged in error, let people know. We've dealt with mismerges now for almost a decade and a half. Well, not quite that long, but it feels like we're getting there. Be 13, no, be 12 here at the end of the month. So yay. And mismerges have existed since the beginning. So please fess up if there's an issue, and everybody can get their holdings updated. As far as the official project's been going, there are approximately 300 combination records that have been created. Most of them are this is a live link if you want to visit there. It's also gone out on the listservs. You can go and check your holdings, particularly with the early stuff, but I'm still running into this on a regular basis. There have been existing mismerges, particularly with existing combo pack records, where there is no way for us to tell centrally what part your library has. So you will want to run one of the reports I mentioned earlier to get that information to see what needs to be updated on those records. But by and large, we're at about 90% with parts on the records in those buckets right now. If you run across a title that you think should be added to the recombination project and you don't want to handle it yourself, you're welcome to skip it. Just pass it on to me. I actually have a form you can fill out here, and I will get those records collected and put into a bucket so everybody can get their parts on them as needed, and then we'll get those merged. And again, we're trying to reduce the number of records, so please don't bring in or copy existing records and strip out content if you can add your holding to the combination record. This has been having a slight effect on holds in a negative fashion, because if everything on a record is parted and there are title holds, those cannot be filled. So one of the things that we have done to help deal with that is, as a consortium, we have actually contracted for specific development to create a holds editor that will let you switch hold types or move holds between parts. Right now, the only kind of hold transition you can do is you can move it from one title part to another title part, from one bib record to another. This will allow you to switch it out so that you'll be able to add it to a volume. You'd be able to, although volume holds are generally not recommended, but you can switch it from a title hold to a part hold, or vice versa, as the situation requires. Emerald Data Systems is the one currently contracted to have it done, and I fully expect that we will begin testing here in the next couple of weeks. So we should have it available for you within the next year or so. I expect it will be part of the new staff catalog, so that may have an effect on how early we can roll that out. And yes, there is a new staff catalog coming, but not until next year, so don't get too worried about it. We encourage you to prioritize part holds. I am seeing new holds being created frequently on newer records, where patrons or staff are visibly making the choice of going with any unassigned part, and that is slowing down their access to holds dramatically. So make sure that everybody knows at your library part holds are where you want it on anything that can and will be parted. If you do notice a title or volume level hold on a fully parted record, we encourage you to cancel and replace the hold. If part's been added in error, we talked about this earlier, Mary Kay got into this with a series entry that shows up as a part instead. Delete the part, and you'll need to cancel and replace the hold so that it can actually access the title level. And if a hold has already been captured, it actually doesn't matter what the hold was, even if it couldn't be refilled now. As long as it's been captured for the patron, they're set, they should get it. The only time it's an issue is if the item shows up for the patron and it's damaged and you can't actually safely hand it off to them. In that case, you'll want to cancel and replace the hold. But Generally, if the hold's already been captured, it's considered fait accompli, and it doesn't matter. We're not worried about targeting after that. There are links here to the chapter in the training manual on managing monographic parts. That's the technical side of things. How do you use the editor and so forth. And then the cataloging procedures has pages and pages of tables and examples of how to use the syntax, the different scenarios involved. I do want to thank the cataloging committee again for all their hard work on getting those procedures updated. And it's time to actually launch things for Q&A. So Mary Kay and Jennifer, feel free to pop in here with any responses you have. The first thing we have a comment on is from Sarah saying parts that are inadequate, where it's a multi-disc record, but the part's just DVD. And yeah, these are things that'll be part of our cleanup as we move on.
Angela, it's all discs, DVD. You don't need to declare what season it is, and the reason you don't is because the MARC record that this item is attached to already states what season it is. So what you're going to do is give that directive that it's all discs dash DVD.
And for Susan, that's an active bug. We're hoping to see some development that will fix it. But right now you are correct. If you are using baskets, you can only select a part on the first item in the basket at a time. So the question was, what do we do if there is a multi-format set with something like a DVD plus CD?
And I think that that's going back to committee. Is that the understanding to discuss that, the format for that?
And yes, Josephine, we can definitely add more examples as needed when you guys meet here in September.
Are we encouraged to create multiple disc format records?
If you circulate your materials that way, if you have a multi-disc set that is DVD, I have these, DVD and Blu-ray together in the same packaging, you are encouraged to note that in your parts.
Yeah, and I am absolutely happy with catalogers, from the very first point that records are getting created, go ahead and incorporate the multi-formats. So yes, I would say go for it. You just want to make sure that you have something in hand since you'll be starting the record to help create the base, that it's a good solid foundational record. Lots and lots of IDs and so on. Anything's possible with enough money. I mean, Ruth, you might want to toss that one on your list.
Yeah, no, I'm writing it down. I'm going to go on to Amanda's question, back to serials. Is there any way to collapse holdings without totally messing up the parts? We have some reference serials that don't circulate, but we keep adding new issues as they are received, and the amount of holdings is unmanageable with each piece listed since we don't really withdraw older issues. I've seen some state library holdings where the consolidated holdings are described in the public item note. Is this the best way to go?
No. If you absolutely have a serial like that, where you just want the MFHD, it's specific to serials and it lets you do a consolidated, we have everything from X to Y. You have to use the serials module to do it in Evergreen. Right now, I don't have anybody that, or up till now, we haven't had anybody that has wanted to use it outside of the state library. But if that is something that you wanted to get into, just reach out and I can help you get that configured. Can you use serials module for some titles and not others? And the answer is yes. You can use it because every serial title has to be set up and maintained using additional different steps. You absolutely can do it both ways.
And then the statement from Catherine Marshall, just to clarify, the MFHD option that is best for bulk reference serials is only available to craft via the serial module.
Yes.
Okay. They've noticed lately that some of their patrons are placing holds on DVDs, not knowing how parts are done at the moment. and the DVDs end up coming from other libraries rather than getting the copies that are readily available on the shelf. And I think that that's a function of that project not being done yet, with it being right around 50%.
Yeah.
And yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody, so very much. Thanks to Ruth for hosting and helping with keep up with all the chat. Thank you so much to Jennifer and Mary Kay for co-presenting with me. It's always such a pleasure to spend time with you guys.
Thank you. We will be doing the next webinar. We will be talking about our Aunt Nellie and our Aunt, was it Bernice?
Blanche.
Aunt Blanche.
Aunt Blanche. We were talking about peculiar relatives this morning, and I think it's a good oral history project. Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate it. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thank you
Bye.
so much.